Hey, Theory 4, it's me, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about the synthetic scales. Before I do that, I want to return to modes for just a second because there's something I wanted to tell you that I forgot to. And that is, I'd love for you to check out a song, an art song by Gabriel Fauré. It's entitled Lydia. It's a beautiful song. It's not Lydia the Tattooed Lady with Groucho Marx. That dates me a lot. It's just called Lydia, and in fact, it's a song that is written for tenor, I do believe, although it can be transposed. It uses the Lydian mode, hence the title and the mode. As opposed to an F major scale. It's on YouTube, probably several recordings, but do check it out if you can. So last time I talked to you a little bit about the whole tone scale. The whole tone scale is considered a synthetic scale. I don't know why we use the word synthetic, I guess to somehow differentiate it from the more traditional modes and the major and minor scales. But the whole tone scale, as the name would suggest, is made up of all whole steps. And as I showed you last time, it does real nicely for flashbacks in movies. It's a very ambiguous scale, so it's hard to write a long piece of music in it because you feel like you're really sort of tonally cast adrift. But in shorter works, it can be used very effectively. And I mentioned the prelude by Debussy, sails, or sometimes translated as veils. I guess the word is translated the same way. You'll also hear it in other pieces of Debussy's. Play of the Waves from La Mer, the Sea, for example. The whole tone scale is made up of two augmented triads, which of course is what gives it its very ambiguous quality. Now here's another scale that's a bit of an odd one. It's called the octatonic scale. Octatonic. It alternates half steps and whole steps, or whole steps and half steps. It can be either way. If we were to do half step, whole step, it would sound like this. Half step, whole step, half, whole, half, whole, half, whole. If we were to break that down into its basic harmonic components, we have basically two diminished seventh chords, which again doesn't leave much in the way of a resolution to a tonic, for example. Now, you might hear an example of that in a piece by Bela Bartok called Harvest Song. You can Google it, look it up on YouTube. It's a very, very beautiful piece that uses this rather odd scale. Stravinsky uses it sometimes also. Now, here's the hexatonic scale, which is a 6-note scale. And if I go back to starting note, it's rather somewhat similar to the whole tone, not exactly the same, but it also is made up of two augmented triads. Now, one more to mention, and that is the Lydian Mixolydian scale, which is also called the sharp 4 flat 7 scale, because the 4th step of the scale is sharped and the 7th step is flatted. Claude Debussy uses this one too. Sharp, flat. It's 2 major minor 7th chords. Now there's also quite a number of pentatonic scales. I'm just going to mention this one right now, which is just the basic major pentatonic. You can play on the black notes of the piano. And I'll bet some of you, when you were kids, rolled your fingers over the keys and drove your parents crazy. But we can transpose the pentatonic scale, penta for 5, into any place we want. I'm just using the black keys because of the obvious simplicity of it. A lot of folk music uses this scale, and in fact, these 5 notes can be found in all of the musical systems all over the world. And some people have gone so far as to say it's part of our DNA. But for example, if I were to play Amazing Grace, pentatonic scale. Here's Auld Lang Syne. Pentatonic scale. And there's many other examples as well. So here are some of the scale materials that are embraced by the 20th century. One thing I will stress before I sign off here is that 20th century composers, especially in our own time, but earlier as well, began to have a marked interest in non-Western music and non-Western scales, non-Western musical systems, such as tonality. So that's where we're going. Okay, well, thank you very much. Sign off here.